guys, and warm welcome back to the channel. My name is Grace if you're new here, and this is the Rusty Thicket. I am finally back. It's been a couple of weeks. I do apologize about that, but I've just had some things going on. So today we are going to work on a zine. It has been a long time since I've done any of my ephemera journaling, and I was just really struggling to get back into the creative flow of things. And this just felt like the best way to go about it. So here are some examples of a few that I've done in the past. All of these are actually listed on my Etsy page, so if you are looking into collecting them or just kind of scrolling through and seeing what they are about, I have them linked down below, or at least a few of them. All of them are a little bit different. I did this one particularly to just kind of showcase some of my smaller pieces of art for somebody who might want to collect that instead of buying the originals. Obviously this comes down to your printer and how well it prints things, because they are digital downloads until maybe I get back to the States. This one is based off of a poem I wrote. I was hanging out at the park after a really hard weekend. If you're following the community page, you understand why, but I really love being in the mountains and in the forests, and we don't really have mountains here, so I went out to the park and just kind of hung out on the outskirts. The forests here can be a little dangerous with the snakes and all that stuff, so I didn't venture too far into them or anything, but we've got some that kind of butt up right against our golf course on the one side, so that's what I felt like doing. I scribbled down a little poem about being in the forest, and I'm going to start out with just kind of not really antiquing it. I just didn't want it to be white, and I didn't have any paper to print on besides regular computer paper, so I'm just kind of winging it with some stamp stuff and a rag. I tried a sponge on a previous one and it was just too concentrated for me, so this is just to make sure that it's not bright white, because nothing else in the zine will be. As you saw before, I have like the little tape runner from Elmer's. I have some glue from a glue stick and some scissors, and that's really all you need besides all of your paper scraps, which I have been collecting for quite some time at this point. Now this little layout here, that's how I recommend doing a zine, just so that you can kind of keep everything in order. The B is for back, the F is for front, and then the way that you read the numbers are the correct way up. So like this one will all be facing me, and then we'll turn it around here in a little bit to get the 3 through 6. So it's a 6-line poem with a front and a back, which is exactly why I wrote it, and I was really hoping I would find things in my stash that would complement the poem, and I spent pretty much a whole day just going through things and organizing them, and I feel like the perfect pieces. So you can do it that way, you know, make a piece based off of the stuff you already have, or you can come up with some kind of theme and then pull everything to match that theme. We'll go through the poem here in just a little bit when I actually get some of those lyrics, I guess you would call them, down. You know, we'll see. But I feel like the most important part with this zine, other than obviously the layout, is just to get your backgrounds down first. That way you can know where to place everything else. If you do it panel by panel, sometimes things overlap that you don't want, or, you know, maybe the composition isn't what you wish it would be. And like, see how these two are very similar here. Because I wanted this moss where it's swaying, because it matches some of the lyrics. Because they're so similar, I wanted to kind of block out some different colors to make them not look too much like one another, especially since I really, really wanted that first one, since one of the lyrics is, you know, being underneath a tree, and that's literally looking up at a tree, so it worked out really well. But I'm going to pair this piece of green paper over here with this one so that we can block out a section to put the lyrics, so that we're not covering up all of that beautiful Spanish moss hanging from the tree. I apologize for the jets that always like to start as soon as I'm recording for a video and I can't help it. They'll probably be outrageously loud. But anyway, one of the cool things about the runner's tape, like the second time here that I'm pulling that up already, it can be a little bit forgiving. This is usually regular computer paper on the background, but I'm actually using cardstock because it's just what I had. And it does have a slightly glossier sheen to it, so it's even more forgiving. But I would recommend, you know, paying attention. I have a lot going on in this video, you can't tell because I'm just recording, but I'm having a chat with my mom, I'm waiting for the laundry to be done, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to flip it around because we want these numbers to be right side up so that you know you're not messing up your pages when we go to fold this later, since it is a one-page zine. Or a one-paper zine with 6 pages. So here I'm pointing out that this is about moss and velvet. It's one of the lines in the poem. I really wanted to add textures to the poetry too. Like I'm not a poet by any means, but I'm really trying to kind of expand my creativity a little bit to help my art. I read somewhere once that dabbling in other arts that you're not familiar with really help you get out of creative ruts sometimes. I think that's in The Artist's Way somewhere. But anyway, I love doing this kind of stuff, but it made more sense to try and scribble out a little poem to go with it this time around. I really like this little piece of paper I've got. It's got real moss glued down to it. A lovely subscriber from the very beginning sent this to me in like a little care package. It was awesome, and I'm finally just now getting around to it. You'll see I'm trying to tape the moss. Don't know why. Just tape the paper. Sometimes I can really embarrass myself. But yeah, we're gonna glue this down at an angle because the velvet piece, or like the kind of felty piece that I have, was already cut at an angle. And I will end up trimming that down just a little bit more so I can see more of the moss, but obviously when you go to scan this in and print it, it doesn't have the same effect because you can't feel the textures. But I do feel like the scanner did a good job of kind of helping you feel like it still has a texture. So if you end up buying this as a digital download, I promise it will at least look like it, even if it can't feel like it. Alright, so for this one, I'm also definitely adding some kind of mushroom sticker to it later. We'll get to all the embellishments at the end because that's my favorite part. But, and I also like to keep things trimmed down so I'm aware of my actual canvases in case, you know, I accidentally overlap something too much or end up putting like my letters off the page or something. Because these are never perfect, and that is kind of the whole point in the ephemera journaling to begin with, but also just zines, you know? You slap them together, you throw them in a scanner, you fold them up, and you hand them out, and that is the whole point. So perfection is not necessary. But that doesn't mean you can't be neat, you know? Clean up your edges or whatever. Sometimes afterwards I'll put this in my iPad so that I can, you know, clean up a few things, or if my scanner maybe had some dust on it or something like that. Now, I really love this. It's kind of like a vellum that I put down first, and then this is one of those like flower petal textured like handmade papers. But I know certain paper textures will lift off and get stuck in my tape runner, so I taped the back part of that. Usually magazine paper does okay. A lot of that is from, well, a lot of this is from magazines, like this one here. And you have to be extra careful with those because the static likes to cling to stuff, and then you have tape on it, which you just saw where I had to remove that. So this panel, part of the lyrics were about leaves and stones, so I kind of wanted this one to have, you know, a little bit of representation for that. I don't want it to be too obvious, but I love ferns, and ferns are in the forest, so that made sense. Also, that's why I have the mushrooms. It's all about the forest in general, not necessarily just trees. When I was trying to name this poem, I had initially called it When I'm in the Trees, and I changed it to When I'm in the Forest because that was more appropriate. So specifically for these videos, I really like to kind of pre-plan out. Obviously you can tell I've cut some of these down and stuff. Just for footage sake, it's easier for me to go through and kind of lay things down and explain them as I go, but some pieces have to evolve, you know, during the process, and this was one of those panels. I really, up until this point, didn't know how I was going to finish it off. All I knew is that it was going to have those ferns, and that's the skinniest little piece of scrap paper that I saved, so I had to do some filling in. But I actually think this ended up being one of my favorite panels, which you will see why at the end when I start doing embellishments. Actually, this one and the one before it are probably my two favorites. So I would love to know in the comment section down below which one is your favorite, based off of just the art alone, or maybe the lyrics when we start adding those here in just a minute. See what I mean? Yeah, the second I put that down there, I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. I loved that you could see through it. Alright, so this last panel, one of the lyrics is tone, and I thought it would be cool to just kind of put a little music sheet. It was also kind of green, and then I didn't notice it, but until like the last minute, when you might be able to make it out, but at the top right hand corner of that piece, it actually says Moonlight Sonata. I don't know if the music is actually reading as Moonlight Sonata or not, but that's one of my absolute favorite pieces of music ever, of all time. And I just thought that was pretty interesting because I didn't notice that. So over top of this one, I'm going to add a little piece of forest from, I think it's another magazine clipping. I didn't want this to be too tree heavy, but you know, you are in a forest, so it called for it. And then on top of this, I'm going to put a little torn paper heart. I had done a bunch of torn paper hearts for a different project a long time ago, and I just had a bunch. I kind of wish I would have done this darker brown, like I picked a different brown color, a lighter one, after everything was said and done, but there was a nice contrast between it and the lettering, so I think that turned out okay. And see, if I would just be paying attention, just by touching that paper, I knew it would stick to my tape runner. It's not a big deal because it'll just kind of wind up and, you know, go in the back, but that's when the glue stick really started coming in handy. So this is our background all done. We're going to move on to what I like to call like the secondary layer, even though we do have multiple layers on this one. These are all, like, you know, what the background is going to look like. So the next pieces I'm going to start adding are what my lettering is going to sit on, or like my words, what they're going to sit on top of, and then any kind of stickers that I know are either going to be behind those words or just need to go down first before I can place the lettering. So I picked out a few different mushrooms here. I know for this velvety one, I want something coming up out of that like diagonal thing, and then obviously I have to put down the frame piece that I found. And I was gonna put the lettering behind it, but when I peeled that backing off, it was a lot more sheer and not necessarily clear than I thought it would be, so I figured the lettering can just still go on top, and it still ended up looking great. And it's got like a nice metal metallic gold to it, which unfortunately you can't see when you scan it, but still adds to the effect, I feel like. And I wanted to be sure that the front didn't look like it was too stand-outish. Like, I know it's mushrooms, and that's kind of... It does give forest, but also it just gives mushrooms. So I wanted to make sure there were mushrooms throughout the whole thing just to kind of tie everything in together. Plus, I love mushrooms. And you know, if you're in a forest and you're not looking for mushrooms, what are you doing? So I thought this one did best because it was a little less overwhelming. I still wanted to be able to see the moss. One of the other reasons I picked these mushrooms is because they were clear on clear sticker paper. And then I also tend not to completely stamp down all of my edges for this very reason right here. I like to come back in later, and sometimes I might need to lift a little corner up or something just like that. Perfect. Alright, so on these other pages here, I already have pieces of paper pre-torn for where my words are going to go. This is the title page, so my title is going to go on this. It is called When I'm in the Forest, and that's what I'm cutting right now. I wanted so badly to tear this, but you can't get that really, really close to the letter rips the same way that you can cutting, and the paper behind it was already torn, so I felt like it was fine to just do really neat, thin cuts on it. Plus, it made it very easy to divide some of the lines in half, which I needed to do for stacking purposes. So all of these are getting the glue stick because the tape runner is too wide for them. It's both easier and harder at the same time because it's messier, but more accurate size-wise, and it doesn't like accidentally tear your paper a lot. You know, that tape runner stuff can. I tried to keep the greens within the family of the greens that were already on the page. I felt like that made each panel really stick out on its own. And I could have just put down the papers here. Like, that's one of the reasons I also wanted to add color to them, so that, you know, they weren't just stark white, but so that they would stand up off the page. But I really like having the pages behind them. I like the little papers behind them. This one, since I've got that big block letter or block color down there, the lettering goes on it just fine, which I really liked. It was a nice way to kind of break things up, make them a little bit more different. And then we're going to turn it back around. This one I kind of played with the idea. It was one of the only ones that I felt like it was long enough that I could do one full sentence all in one sweep, but it ended up looking nicer divided out anyway, so that's what we did. Plus this green on top of that green, and the way the paper's edges are like really fluffy made it look extra velvety. And you know, if you're not into writing poetry, or you just don't feel like it's something you would want to try out to do something like this, you could always take someone's poem and illustrate it yourself. I obviously would not recommend turning around and trying to make profit or sell that or do anything, but if you're just handing zines out for fun and you're just, you know, enjoying it for the aspect of the art, or maybe you want to make a gift for someone, I think that would be a really cool way to, you know, exercise this same kind of thing where you can, you know, take some words and turn it into a piece of artwork. Or maybe you have a friend, or, you know, maybe your favorite song or something like that that, you know, you would want to illustrate to. Country music is so good for illustrating because it's usually very story driven, and that oftentimes means lots of descriptive words and stuff like that. So here we're going to zoom up. You can really see the texture of that paper on the left hand side, which I love, and then I think these are my two favorite panels, so I really wanted to get a little extra close to those. So the poem reads, "Beneath the boughs where shadows play, I feel my soul rise and sway. The mossy earth, my velvet throne, the forest whispers, you are home. Magic hums through leaf and stone, my heart beats with the woodland's tone." And now it's time to do my most favorite part, which is the final embellishments. This is one of my favorite books. I actually have two of them. This one is a little older. It's coming apart kind of at the seams, but I flipped through it a lot. So I thought I'd show you a few pages. You can find this in the description box below also, along with a couple of my other favorite ones. One more I'll show here on the channel. The other one I've shown previously, like a while back, but I wanted a couple of beetles and maybe some bugs for this page here because it talks about whispers, and that kind of made me think about, you know, like little bugs and little insects and maybe birds whispering, you know, like how a forest does. So I really love these because they're that vintage style that I like, but they're also you know, on the smaller side. I have a bigger antique sticker book that has really large pieces that don't fit very well on my zines, but these are always perfect. And the other one that I have is, I think, the Mystic one. This one's really pretty. I'm gonna do this snail because I wanna make sure that I'm not just doing bugs. I want other, you know, forms of life on here. And I thought about adding birds and stuff, but nothing really caught my eye, so we're just gonna stick to that. And I think I'm gonna do one more beetle. But yeah, they're very beautiful. I'm gonna get that last one from this book, the mystical one. I cannot wait to use some of the stuff in here. This is from my sister-in-law for my birthday in September, and it's the first time I'm using it. But I can just think in my head of all these wonderful zines and like little pieces of artwork I would like to do with them. So I chose this little green beetle up in the corner. I thought that would be really cool. Just to make it look a little extra foresty. And then I felt like the panel next to it needed something down in that right-hand corner. It was just looking a little bare because of that block of color with no real focal point to kind of help your eye move around it. And I was definitely thinking about some kind of fern or another mushroom. Ultimately, because there's a mushroom right next to it, I think I just decided I would rather some kind of little leafy guy. And then I found the perfect one on this page, but I had some hesitation because I really wanted to put that hand down there, but it wasn't going with the overall theme. So I just spent a minute contemplating that. Should I have done the hand? But I like the direction this one was going in, and yeah, I just really think it ties it together. So the next part with a zine is once it's done, you could just fold that up and, you know, hand that out to somebody, but that's just one thing. Zines were really made to be thrown on a scanner so you can print a bunch of them out. And that is also how you can buy them digitally from me. I like to do what I call the hot dog, or well, in this case, it would be the hamburger hot dog window fold. I will also link in the description box below my actual tutorial for this, but really you just fold it in half short ways and half long ways, and then you take the two sides and you fold them into the middle. Hello again, Jets. Pre-folding it like this is what gives you those pages. I also, when I make these zines to sell, I scan them in and I open them up in my iPad to add that back page. I always add my information and stuff back there. You could add whatever you want. You could literally make it like it's another, you know, like the back of a book or another front of a book look. And then in the center, those two panels in the center, you want to cut a very clean line in between those. You don't want to go all the way to the edges and cut it in half. You just want that center piece to be cut. And then you're going to pull them to the side. After you get everything, you know, nice and pressed down, you want good crisp lines. And then you're going to kind of squish it together. When you purchase them through Etsy and then eventually my website, I will have like pictographs of how to fold them as well, but like I said, I'll put a link down there below for my actual tutorial, or at the end. And then that's what it looks like all folded up, and it's completely ready. You can hand these out. I think they make great stocking stuffers and gifts for your friends, and just like, you know, if you want to make a little, it's like a burned CD, but you know, a little poem for your boyfriend, your husband, your you know, girlfriend, whatever. I just think they're fun, they're cute, they're very simple. I can do a whole zine in a day if I have a really good idea and I just have some time to go through all of my little scrap papers. But I would love to know what you guys think below. See you next week!